Welcome to today's full council meeting. Particular welcome to those watching in person and online. We are intending to break for lunch, hopefully somewhere 30, and that'll be an hour's lunch break. We will also seek to take a comfort break after paper 5, and other comfort breaks as required. Just to remind members that we are in the formal pre-election period for the local government by-election on the 26th of September. And I'll now invite the clerk to confirm any apologies and take a roll call of those attending online.
Thank you, Provost. Good morning, members. I have no formal apologies for today's meeting. In terms of those members online, I believe we have Councillor Kogali. Can you confirm that you're online?
Yes, I am.
Thank you. And Councillor James.
Morning, Scott.
And Councillor Robertson.
Good morning.
Thank you. And don't think we have any other members online unless they want to shout out at this point. No, all other members are in the chambers, Provost.
Thank you very much. Just before we go into item 2, actually, I'm just going to invite the Head of Legal and Governance to just outline in more detail an email that was issued to members briefly before the meeting. I appreciate not all members might have seen their emails, but it does explain the reasons for the order of business today.
Good morning, councillors. In terms of the email that I sent out this morning, it was just to explain the rationale behind the chunking of the investment proposal, the integrated investment proposal paper. This is because we need to serve notice on the landlords today if we are minded to exercise our right to purchase Pooler House and the adjacent car park. So if we can get that item of business done, legal are ready and prepped to go if that is the decision and the will of the chamber. But that's one of the reasons why we'd like to get that element of business, that part of the proposal, dealt with first, and then we'll go on in the afternoon to deal with the leisure and sport aspect.
Thank you very much. Item 2 is declarations of interest. Do members have any declarations of interest they wish to declare in respect of items of business on today's agenda?
Provost, if I may, I don't have a link at the moment for this morning's session, so I think I declare a non-financial interest in Live Active Leisure.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Braun. Any other declarations of interest?
I'd also like to declare a non-financial interest in Live Active Leisure.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Carr. Yes.
Councillors, as I advise every time these type of papers come up, if you are declaring an interest, you are effectively saying that you don't think you can participate in the discussion and the debate. Are you saying, for the point of transparency, that you want to declare a connection because you are members of Live Active Leisure, but are you actually saying that you're declaring an interest? Because if you're declaring an interest, then obviously you can't participate in the discussion and the debate.
It's just a connection.
To clarify, yes, just a connection, is it?
Okay, thank you. I'm not seeing any other declaration of interest. Members, we have requests for deputations in respect of item 6, Perth City Integrated Investment Proposal. Are members content to hear the deputation requests? Okay, thank you. Members, item 3 is the minutes of the previous meeting of the Council of the 26th of June 2020. Sorry, William Clarence, you have an interest.
Apologies, Provost. Slow to jump in the chat there. I feel in light of other members there, I maybe should say declare an interest as a no. Lisa's shaking her head at me saying no. Okay, sorry.
The fact that people are members of Live Active or any other ALIO does not of itself mean that you have a declarable interest. You would only have a declarable interest if you thought that the business before you and the questions that you were being asked to make decisions about compromise your legal requirements as a director or a trustee of these boards. If you are saying there are a number of people across the chamber who are connected because by virtue of their council appointments, they have been appointed as representatives on these boards, but unless there is a personal conflict or a legal conflict in terms of your duties as a trustee or director of these boards, you're under no requirement to declare an interest because there is not a declarable interest. But in the interest of transparency, it is noted and recognised that everyone who has been appointed to these to Live Active Leisure Board has a connection, but it is not a declarable interest that would preclude you from participating in the discussion and the debate.
Okay, thank you. Members, are we happy to approve the minute of the council meeting of 26th of June 2024? Good, thank you. Members, item 4 is a motion on the UK success at the 2024 Paris Olympics. I'm going to invite Councillor Bob Braun to move the motion.
Good morning, Provost, elected members, officers. We have a busy agenda ahead of us today, so I'll keep my introduction short, given the motion itself is self-explanatory. A tally of 65 medals, whether gold, silver or bronze, doesn't just happen. It takes dedication, determination and sacrifice to get to a standard to compete with the world's best. And it is a tally to be proud of. An example of that determination and dedication was seen in the sheer willpower of marathon runner Rose Harvey, who soon after starting gradually had increasing pain in one leg. And whilst not winning and coming in almost last, she pushed on to complete the course, only to find out later that she had done so with a fractured femur. And close to home, we must not forget middle and long distance runner Laura Muir from Milnerthorpe, who whilst not winning a medal, recorded an amazing personal best. Or first-time Olympian 23-year-old Charlie Aldridge of Crieff, who competed in the cross-country mountain biking competition. Of course, it is not just the medal winners we must congratulate, it's the team as a whole. After all, as that saying says, it is not the winning that counts, but the taking part. And to take part, all the athletes have to be at their best, to be in the greatest competition of all. Provost, as we sit today, the Paris Paralympics are ongoing. Whatever the final medal count, and there have already been some wins, the fact that they compete is an inspiration, not only to others with disability, showing what can be done, but in some ways to all of us by showing that the human spirit really knows no limit, no bounds to what it can achieve. And finally, if I may, Provost, during the summer, some of our cities erupted into terrible rioting, showing the world the worst that we can be. However, our Olympians, a diverse team reflecting the country that we are, were showing the world as the very best that we can be. And that is another reason to congratulate them. Thank you, Provost.
Thank you very much, Councillor Braun. Councillor Keith Allen, second, please.
Thank you, Provost. I would also like to take this opportunity to say a heartfelt well done on behalf of everyone at Perth Kinross Council. Anyone who wins a medal at the Olympics is considered to be one of the 3 best people in that discipline in the world. So be it 1, 2 or 3 in amongst approximately 8 billion people, that is some achievement indeed. I also take my hat off to our Para-Olympians who are competing and winning medals of all colours as we speak. As of yesterday, they had won a total of 59 medals, including 30 golds. Delighted to second. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. Do any members wish to comment on the motion? Councillor Barrett.
Just very briefly, Provost, I did think that there was an omission with regard to the Paralympic Olympians' performance in the motion provided. I'm very pleased that both the mover and the seconder recognise the extraordinary performance of our Paralympic athletes as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barrett. Are there any other comments? Okay. If there are no other comments, we will move on to item 5. Item 5 is the Perth City Centre Development and Design Framework Consultation Draft. And David Littlejohn, on the Strategic Lead for Economy Development and Planning, is going to make a short presentation on the report, and then we'll take questions on the report. Mr. Lister.
Good morning. I'll just wait for the presentation to appear on screen. That's fine. Next slide, please. The Perth City Plan sets out an agenda to capitalise on Perth's many strengths and address some of its weaknesses. It identifies some key programmes and projects that the council, the private sector and other public bodies can deliver. A lot has been achieved over the past 5 years, and it's sometimes easy to forget this. Next slide. And indeed, some of what we have achieved has been award-winning. The Perth Creative Exchange, for example, was voted Scottish Regeneration Project of the Year in 2021, and some other examples there on the screen. But we recognise that more needs to be done, particularly in the city centre, as Perth, like most towns and cities across the UK, needs to adapt to changing work, leisure and expenditure patterns. The council owns very little property in the city centre, but we can work with others to find solutions. I'm delighted to advise, for example, that the planning application for the conversion of 1-5 High Street into a boutique hotel is currently being prepared by the developer, with an opening scheduled, subject to planning permission, for mid-2026. And that's an important point. Development takes a long time, particularly outside larger cities. And so it's important to have long-term plans and work them up into proposals that are investable and are fundable. Next slide. The draft development and design framework sets out some bold ideas to look at parts of the city centre that could play a bigger role in economic and social development. With some new thinking on how to tackle long-term empty shop units by looking at how local people and visitors are likely to use the city centre in the future. I want to quickly provide a flavour of the ideas being looked at, concepts at this stage, to encourage people and businesses to engage over the autumn and share their own thoughts. Next slide. The framework looks at our streets and how to make them greener, safer, more attractive. And this slide shows some ideas for the area around King Edward Street, for example. A bold reimagination of part of the shopping centre, which fundamentally hasn't changed since the 1980s, perhaps partial removal of the roof to create some new indoor-outdoor spaces. The shopping centre, of course, being owned by a pension fund, the council being the head landlord. And to the Mill Quarter, proposals to make better use of the Thimble Row car park, once full of mill worker homes and cleared as a slum. The site could provide more housing, encouraging more people to use the city centre in the evening, or equally, it could become the new leisure and swimming centre. Next slide. The cultural quarter could be extended to take in the area around the cinema and the lower city mill. What if the mill could be repowered with water? And what if the Lade could once again be uncovered and a new urban park created? Perth railway station has one of the largest footprints and longest distances between platforms of any of the Scottish stations, and this image clearly shows early thinking on what it could be like in the future, with some of the platforms infilled, old roofs removed, a new civic square and a new bus interchange, radically improving first impressions of Perth and the walking route into the city centre. Next slide. When the harbour closes formally to commercial traffic, there's an opportunity to reimagine its use for water sports by more small businesses and to reconnect it with the city centre via Moncrieff Island. Next slide. And speaking of reconnecting, there's a longer term vision of the Perth UHI campus as an integrated learning campus, but in the shorter term, some radical thinking on how to make it much more accessible from and to the city centre. And as I said at the start, today is the beginning of a process of engagement to explore what people like, what they would like changed, and what they would prioritise for funding when it becomes available, whether that be public or private funding. I'm joined today by some colleagues who can provide more detail for you, should you have detailed questions. Will Purdy, who I hope is online, is from the Urbanists, who worked with officers on the framework. Steve MacDonald is the Economic Development Manager for Tourism, Culture and Place, and he's in the chamber behind me, along with Alan Farnington, who's led much of the work already across the city centre in respect of the Creative Exchange, St Paul's and the lighting project. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lister-John. Bailey Ahern with 2 questions.
Thank you very much, and thanks for the presentation and the paper. With the numerous proposed projects across the different quarters, how will the council prioritise which projects to begin with? And is there a clear timetable or criteria for prioritising these developments?
If the council approves the draft framework today, we then move into a period of public consultation over the autumn. And I mean consultation in a deep sense, working with business groups, working with focus groups, working with the public. And I think we need to hear what the public and the wider business community think. We need to hear and understand what their priorities might be for reprioritising Perth. And I think at that point, we'd be asking them as well what their thoughts would be on prioritising, and that'll allow us to kind of bring something back to council with a prioritised list of areas. Clearly, the prioritisation will ultimately be dependent on the availability of funding, which is not in strong supply at the moment. So I think it will be a case of what are the priorities for people and businesses and the council, and then working those up ready for future funding opportunities. So probably a little premature to answer the question in detail right today, but we will get to that point over the autumn.
Thank you. The second question is, given the potential changes to the city centre, what support will be provided to existing local businesses that might be affected by any construction and development activities? And have we learnt lessons from the work that's been carried out on Tay Street? You also mentioned 1 to 5 High Street and the other developments. Will there be requirements for developers to ensure that businesses are not disadvantaged?
In short, yes. I mean, Tay Street was an exception given the scale of the works and the length of time, but clearly businesses have been disadvantaged by that major piece of infrastructure. I think leading up to the point of implementation, the whole point of this consultation engagement exercise is to get some of that feedback. As we then work up the proposals in more detail, the prioritised proposals, that's the time to engage, and the time to engage is before spades hit the ground. So absolutely yes.
Thank you. Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you, Provost. First of all, thank you very much for the paper and for the consultants' reports. And it is a medium long-term vision, but we want to build it bit by bit, I think by precious bit. However, there's one factor I do want to ask about, and it is at risk. Perth Kinross was allocated 5 million in the Levelling Up Fund from the previous UK government. That money, I think, has to be said, is at risk. It is to cover Lower City Mills and hopefully the Lade Corridor as well, the ironworks, and also the Tourist Information Centre on the High Street. Can I just ask, with that 5 million, just how much at risk is it? Have we received recently any update from either the Scottish office or more likely the UK Treasury? Or is it just being deferred? Thank you.
Absolutely correct that 5 million would make a significant contribution to delivering this plan. That's undoubted, and indeed would deliver much of the ambition around the cultural quarter, mill quarter area. At the moment, we've had no formal confirmation one way or the other from the Scotland office. So we have, as officers, written to our civil servant counterparts, and the response is that ministers are still considering how to respond to the previous UK government's levelling up fund. So I'm afraid the answer is we have no further information at this stage.
Just to follow up quickly, I thank you very much for that response. It's disappointing, but hopefully we can get clarity on this soon. And as I said, I think the key thing with those 3 projects, if we can proceed with them, then you can build on success, and success reinforces success and can give what is in this paper momentum that can drive us forward over coming years. Thank you.
Councillor Braun.
Thanks, Provost, and good morning, Mr. Littlejohn. Thank you again for this report, very comprehensive. There's a lot of talk, obviously, of sustainable transport in the paper, and one of the things that I couldn't see in there, even if it's not commercially viable, is some form of tram link to bring people in from the outside towns, Blackgowrie, Guildtown, Alyth, Scone. I mean, has that been considered? I mean, obviously, capital cost is immense, I appreciate, but given this is going to stretch ahead for 10, 20 years, is that something we should be looking at? Thank you.
Yes, again, is the answer. This is one piece of a suite of strategies and programmes being brought forward. Ultimately, all of what we agree ultimately will be reflected in the local development plan, and specifically in relation to active travel and greater use of public transport and access to the city centre by car, in some cases, will be reflected in the mobility strategy. That piece of work has just been out to public consultation, and my colleagues are now working up the finalised version of that mobility strategy to bring that back to council. So I think when you see the mobility strategy alongside the city development framework and the local development plan, that's the suite of policy instruments, if you like, that will set the scene for everyone and give that clarity over how we develop land and how we connect people and businesses with uses in and around Perth.
Thank you. Bailey.
Thank you, Provost. I welcome this report, and I welcome the level of vision and ambition shown within the report, particularly the fact that we're to have not 4 but 5 quarters. I wonder if they should be called quintiles. But my question is actually about the section 4.2, 4.3, 4.4 refer to the role of the Perth City Leadership Forum. I'm just trying to get my head around some of that. The report mentions a lot about private sector leadership, but all the projects attributed to the Perth City Leadership Forum in 4.3 were exclusively or almost exclusively funded by the council or government. Where do I find minutes for the Perth City Leadership Forum meetings that can confirm the level of their involvement in these projects or decision making? And also, what does the Perth City Leadership Forum bring that this council wouldn't have done by itself anyway? Thank you.
I'll answer the first part first. So as I explained earlier, that the council doesn't control, other than through regulation, much of the land and property in the city centre, and therefore much of this would need to be delivered in partnership with private sector businesses, partly as owners, but also partly potentially as sponsors and investors. So the original Perth City Leadership Forum was set up to provide that challenge, support, and support financially as well as morally for the council, for the delivery of the projects rather. The Leadership Forum per se is now in abeyance. It wound itself up earlier this year. What we have now is a new business partnership. It's probably, to be fair, a looser body. It's not a constituted organisation, but nonetheless it does represent, along with the Chamber of Commerce, business interests in and around Perth. So we've been working with them to gain their support. But I think it's fair to say the majority of the funding to deliver this longer term aspiration is unlikely to come from that cohort of Perth businesses. They can use their influence along with us to secure UK and Scottish government support, they can use their influence to support potentially institutional investment. But I think it's unlikely that those largely smaller businesses are going to be making a significant contribution other than to their own operations, their own premises.
Councillor Peter Barrett.
Thanks. It was interesting to read in the city centre customer and occupier demand study about the negative impact and damaging impacts that large city centre buildings have on dissuading or as forming a barrier to inward investment and regeneration of the town centre, as opposed to just being kind of passive empty properties. I was surprised that the former What Every Woman Wants store in Scott Street wasn't included as one of those, and I wondered, is there a particular reason for that? I appreciate it may not be the same level of priority as Debenhams or Beale's buildings, but it does seem to me that it fits in that category.
Sorry, Mr. Littlejohn, can you put your microphone on?
I think you're absolutely right in terms of a significant footprint within the city centre. I guess at the moment, positively, the ground floor of that building is occupied by Highland Homeware, and I think there's a chiropractic practice in part of it as well. So it's perhaps not as an immediate an issue. The building is owned by a local company. And they did secure planning permission, you might recall, previously for the conversion of the upper floors into student accommodation. That planning consent has expired. Expired kind of pre-COVID, then with the cost of living crisis, etc., the construction inflation, they don't feel yet in the position to bring forward new proposals for the upper floors, but it is their intention to do so at the right time. So I think that building potentially does have a solution, but it has been vacant for, I think, certainly the upper floors for all of my 13 years working in Perth.
Good, thank you. Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Provost. Do we have any indication of a joint and positive approach to this ambition with Network Rail? At 5.8, it sets out what Network Rail are going to do with regards to platforms, etc., but nothing with regards to our proposal. And if you can also touch on how the bus station fits into that, that would be great. Thank you.
So the proposals for the station area have been worked up in consultation with Network Rail, Transport Scotland, and other partners, including Historic Environment Scotland. So we're reflecting the kind of combined thinking around that area. There's also £15 million of Taste City's regional deal money sitting, waiting to be spent in that area as well. So the sequencing is quite important to deliver that long-term change. So Network Rail has already committed significant funding to begin the engineering work that effectively allows all of this to happen. So shortly you'll start to see some of the replacement of the signalling, which is quite dated at Perth, and some of the kind of engineering works to allow electrification. All of that needs to be put into place first, and all of that's funded. I think it's fair to say the cost of delivering the wider improvements that we would want to see in terms of infilling tracks, partial demolition of the listed buildings, subject to consent, all of that is probably realistically heading towards 10 years away in terms of the availability of significant amounts of capital, including the £15 million of Taste City's regional deal cash. So it's a master plan. There's an intention to deliver change, but like so much, it is not yet fully funded, but I'm confident in time it will happen. It needs to happen.
Thank you. Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Provost. Thanks for the presentation there, and it's great to see this vision come forward. Just on the same theme with mobility, you mentioned the three main this document and the LDP3 as it comes forward, and mobility strategy as it comes forward. Just the mobility will have strategic actions attached to it. That detail on how we'll move around Perth City and also in and out of Perth City. You know, we've got a few, you know, Councillor Allen gave one specific example, but just the general, how you get that master plan for the movement, because that's absolutely key to the developments within the city, to how we travel around inside it. When will we see more detail like that come forward, so that any other developments that come forward will fit into that general council strategy we're looking for going forward? Thank you.
I think in a matter of months rather than any longer. The LDP itself is probably towards the end of 2026, 2027, but the mobility strategy we will be able to bring forward for consideration by the council or your committee much quicker than that, and that will start to set out the direction of travel. Again, some of the building blocks of that need to be put in place first. So you recall Perth Transport Futures policy, which is looking at that wider network around Perth, required the completion of the Cross-Tay Link Road Destiny Bridge in order to create more of the opportunities in the city centre. So you'll recall there is a phase 4 of Perth Transport Futures, which is beyond the current bridge, beyond the Bertha Park Link Road, and that was about active travel in the city centre. And I think when the bridge is open and the Bertha Park Link Road is completed, that starts to allow some reimagination of the streets and how the streets are used. So quite a lot of feedback that came through the Big Place conversations were about, for example, South Street, which is perhaps not the most attractive street in Perth. And there was some proposals from the public back then about greening the street, widening the pavements, putting in dedicated cycleways. All of that is only possible once you remove unnecessary traffic, through traffic from the city centre. So there's big chunky things that will be put in place that allow the delivery of some of those active travel projects. They'll be set out in more detail as part of the action plan attached to the mobility strategy.
Thank you. That's great.
Stuart.
Thanks, Provost. Obviously, this is a very long-term sort of strategic thinking, at least in the draft. I wondered about at section 5.5, the Big Place conversation identified concerns about the look and feel of the city centre, particularly a sense of neglect by some owners and the impact of vacant premises. That seems to me like a more immediate short-term action or a more immediate short-term issue that action could be taken on now. And I was just wondering what the council's powers were in terms of either dangerous or neglected properties in the city centre.
We have a working group that's been up and running actually for a number of years, the Vacant and Eyesore Properties Group, and that brings together planning officers, building standards, environmental health, the Perth Kinross Heritage Trust and others, and that's about looking at a combination, if you like, of carrots and sticks. So it's using the council's regulatory powers where we can do so to enforce change, and that's, for example, around the use of amenity notices where that can be justified to get property owners to improve, or in the worst extreme, dangerous buildings notices. But on the other side of that, it's the incentivisation. And that's where our commercial property team work with owners to try and bring forward change. And whether that be tenement owners, and the introduction of the missing shares scheme helps facilitate some of the work with tenemental owners. The Adapt Your Property scheme, which the council has funded for a number of years, and again the latest round fully subscribed, that incentivises owners to make the changes to their property. And there's feasibility funding available as well to encourage work to be progressed. The challenge always is ultimately where buildings are looking untidy, but they're not dangerous. The responsibility absolutely is with owners, and it's simply by encouraging is about the best we can do. So plants growing out of people's gutterings is absolutely the responsibility of those owners to deal with. So we can identify it and point it out to them and keep pointing out to them, but we are limited in what we can do until it becomes a public safety issue.
Thank you. That's helpful. It might be useful to get a member's briefing on the work of the vacant and eyesore property working group at some point, just so that we can track progress in that respect. My second question is about the consultation. So the consultation framework is to be worked up, I think, over the autumn by officers. And I see that we've got specific engagement with property owners in the particular areas and engagement with the business community. Obviously, I represent, and most councillors represent, rural wards, and we see a lot of money invested in the city centre. In Perth City itself. But we do also feel a sense of ownership of Perth City, and I just wondered what efforts there might be to engage the wider public outside Perth City in terms of making the city an attractive destination venue.
Absolutely, and we did that when the original city plan was produced, because Perth isn't clearly just for those who live within the city boundary. It's a service centre for the wider region. A successful Perth contributes to a more successful Perth and Kinross. So absolutely right. And yes, the intention is to do engagement with those communities outside the city centre about how they access it, how they find it, and what they would like to see delivered in the city centre. Absolutely.
Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Provost, and thank you very much, Scott, for such a detailed report. It's certainly a very good vision going forward. I kind of infer from the report that one of the issues that you're kind of trying to encourage is more housing in the city centre. Is that correct? Is that a correct inference?
Yes, the city plan, dating back to the very first city plan 2013, was always very clear that in order to support businesses in the city centre, we need a stronger evening economy. And that can be achieved in a couple of ways. It can be getting more people to come back into the city centre to use leisure facilities in the evening, and it can be by encouraging more people to live in the city centre, and particularly younger people. We often get feedback from younger professionals that they would prefer, they're urban focused, they want to be in an urban area, but the availability and choice of housing for younger people in the city centre is perhaps not what it could be. So yes, absolutely, housing is very much part of that. Housing and leisure are very much part of that mix to support the evening economy.
Thank you. Leader of the Council.
Thanks, Provost. And yeah, thanks for the report, and I'll speak to it later, David. Over the last few days or weeks, funding's been discussed, or the lack of funding on various things moving forward. I was wondering, I also, on the back of Councillor Donaldson, I wrote to Angela Rayner asking, in a personal capacity, giving them congratulations for part of the new government, but asking for what the status was with the £5 million that had been awarded by the previous Conservative government. I got no comfort in the response that we would get that. And unfortunately, our funding is decided at levels above us. And so my concern is about the £15 million from the Tay Cities deal. And I don't know if it's yourself or other officers could answer that. Is there a possibility that if we do not spend it within the time frame we're meant to, other projects will take the money in, because some projects aren't going to be delivered on time, and the cost of these projects, this is within the Tay Cities, will then take the money? Is there a chance that may happen? And also, governments are clawing back money, and if we don't spend the money within the time frame, is there a danger that both governments would take the Tay Cities deal money that is unspent back if it's not spent?
think ultimately in the very long term that's a possibility, but the £15 million is programmed to be spent towards the end of the deal period. And we had meetings, officers had meetings with Scottish and UK government directors earlier this week, and that there's no indication whatsoever that any of this money is going to be removed from the Tay Cities deal. And the management group is very clear that at the moment there's no appetite to remove money from particular projects unless it's absolutely clear there is no prospect of them being delivered. So I think the money's absolutely safe for now. But the requirement of all City Deal project is to have an outline business case approved within the next 18 months. So that's the target that officers are working to. We've had initial meetings with both Network Rail and, importantly, Transport Scotland, because the money sits effectively in their budget. Transport Scotland and Network Rail remain absolutely committed to delivering an ambitious master plan for Perth Station and the bus interchange part of that. It's a matter of timing and how that money can be best invested in advance of the bigger capital that required to do the station work. So it's absolutely on our minds and absolutely following that through to make sure that money is protected for Perth and Kinross.
Thanks very much, David. I think that gives everybody within the chamber some comfort that we cannot afford to lose any funding in any shape or form from any government at this time. Thank you.
Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you, Provost. I agree entirely with what Councillor Ling is saying. However, it's not just public sector funding, it's private sector funding and leveraging that in. At the end of the report from the retail group, it refers to creating the Perth City Centre Opportunities Prospectus. It's not a plan, it's a prospectus, and that's a bit more solid. Now, clearly that may depend on, indeed, on decisions we take today, and let us hope they are decisions. We don't defer and delay once again, that it's clear and there's clarity. However, with the prospectus, when do you hope to be able to bring that forward and to push that? And in particular, am I right in saying it's not just for existing local businesses, it's to bring in new private capital from outside Perth. It's about inward investment, and that's what we've got to look to. Yeah.
Yes, I mean, again, we're about to go out to consultation and engagement, but I would be surprised if that action, that prospectus for the city centre for particularly retail isn't one of the priorities that are brought forward. So I would anticipate in the subsequent report to council, when that prioritised action list is there, I would suspect that prospectus will be in there. And you're absolutely right. I mean, the retail group, who are UK retail experts, are quite clear that although retail is changing, there is still demand for retail. It just has to be the right type of retail. And looking at the kind of socioeconomic demographic profile of Perth, there are some national retailers, niche retailers that probably should be represented in Perth but are not. So they need to be targeted to understand if they can be assisted to invest in the city centre. And likewise, how do we assist the owners of those larger vacant premises find new uses? There's no point really in standing back saying it's their problem. It's a collective problem. For example, the Debenhams building, we need to try and work with the Danish owners of that property to find a realistic value and a realistic use of that building. I think the prospectus can try and set out opportunities as much as anything else. So it is a priority.
Just quickly follow up. Thanks very much. And could I just say it's not just entirely about retail. Will the prospectus be pitched, and this is maybe looking further down the road, but to the possibility of corporate headquarters relocating to Perth? Because it's an area where Perth City and Perth Strat used to be very strong with several companies, including FTSE companies, and we've fallen back in that. and bring those decision makers to Perth, that can be transformational just in its own. Okay.
Yes, with caveats. I think that's it's difficult to do that, and we have been working on that through our Invest in Perth approach for a number of years. And I think actually that's where the support and expertise and advice of some of the existing corporates can help. So I think our relationship in that case with SSE, with Aviva, with Stagecoach, and how they can work with us to help sell Perth and actually the wider area for more corporate inward investment. But it's difficult, and bricks and mortar investment is becoming less prevalent across the country than it was previously. Companies are not necessarily looking to create large footprint headquarters any longer. But yes, you're absolutely right. It's in the mix. We're not going to reject any approach or any potential solution for Perth or the wider area. So we'll carry on trying to secure inward investors.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Provost. I think my question perhaps follows on from that of Councillor Donaldson. Thanks very much for the report. It's very interesting and informative. And while there are many challenges, I think it does show that there are also lots of opportunities. And my question was about what resources do we currently have that are dedicated to proactively marketing Perth as an investment opportunity for, retail, hospitality, or other commercial companies to come here. Thank you.
We have two officers who are principally involved in supporting our Invest in Perth campaign with a modest marketing budget. That modest budget is perhaps less of an issue than it was maybe 10 years ago, because the use now of social media and digital marketing is making a significant difference from the old days when you needed to have physical collateral and you had to literally travel around the country kind of face-to-face meeting people. So I think we're achieving a lot with limited resources, but I'm confident we have the right resource. It's actually now about getting the message out there, and having this vision is part of that mix, because it shows that Perth and Kinross is ambitious and that we do have a vision for the long-term prosperity of the area, and it's trying to sell something that's exciting to others to encourage that engagement with us in the first place, in the way that other cities and towns across the country do as well. So we're in competition with many other places for that investment.
Thank you. Deputy Leader.
Thank you. Thank you, Provost. David, thanks again for this report, which is very comprehensive and much appreciated. Excuse me. I'm sure everyone in this chamber shares an ambition for Perth City Centre to be as vibrant as it can possibly be, to attract visitors to the city centre, and also to be a centre which is as close to what the public want. One of the issues, and without unnecessarily going down this particular rabbit hole, one of the issues that keeps on coming up is the issue about car parking. My understanding is that in Perth City Centre there are currently 2,629 car parking spaces across 18 car parks, and that the capacity of these venues or these locations is rarely, if ever, stretched. It's normally around 50 to 60%, that kind of thing, on busy days. Can you confirm, in terms of this proposal before us at the moment, that you agree that car parking in this centre is adequate, and in any event that we should be encouraging public transport by people who want to come in whenever possible. Thanks.
Yes and yes. I mean, before we embarked on this piece of work, particularly when we looked at Thimble Row and when the council, agreed to remove the requirement for 200 spaces at Thimble Row, but by not progressing the multi-storey car park, which members will remember. Some work was done at that time to look at the capacity and usage of car parking. We don't think it's significantly changed since then, but at best, car parks are about 80% at full. On occasional days around Christmas, they are full, but the majority of the time that there is capacity. But that capacity requires motorists to use the top floors, for example, of multi-storey car park, and to use all of the South Inch, even though it means a short walk. And I think that's my position in terms of the availability of car parking, and there's the balance again of encouraging active travel. Active travel is an incentive. You can't penalise people into active travel. You have to offer them something that's better. Now, without going down a discussion about buses, what we can immediately control through this piece of work is making it more pleasant to walk around the city centre, wider pavements, more cycleways for wheeling or walking or cycling. So I think we can do quite a lot to incentivise and make it more attractive, and that's really very important, as you say, as well as the provision of an adequate number of parking spaces.
Thank you. Councillor Cuthbert.
Thank you, Provost. Yeah, seeing as Thimble Row's come up, I'll ask a question I was going to ask later. My understanding is that the income from Thimble Row car park was £237,420 this year, 23-24. And in 22-23, it was 191,504. That's a 24% increase. Now, I'm wondering why there was that increase, and is that perhaps people coming into the city and then going to the museum? And have the demands changed? Are we seeing a start of a pattern where that's going to be more important than it was in the past?
I don't think I can answer that question directly just now. I think your supposition is possibly correct. I mean, car park income, I think, is a separate debate, because of some of the other existing car parks we're using more extensively. The income is just generated from a different set of car parks. But I think we'd need to maybe reserve that kind of question or get an answer to you from my parking colleagues.
Thank you very much, Mr. Littlejohn. There are no other questions, so I'll invite the Leader of the Council to move a motion.
First of all, I'd like to thank the officers and the consultants who've brought this paper to us, and I look forward to it being developed moving forward. So thanks, David, and your team. Over the past 10 years since the first Perth City Plan was published, many of the proposals it contained have been delivered by the Council in partnership with other organisations and businesses. In some cases, the work has been recognised for its innovation. For example, the repurposing of the former St John's Primary as the Perth Creative Exchange was awarded Regeneration Project of the Year at the Scottish Property Awards. And of course, Perth Museum, the home of the Stone of Destiny, has opened to huge acclaim and has been a real hit with residents and visitors alike. However, I recognise that Perth is not immune to the economic challenges faced by cities and towns across this country, and that more needs to be done, not only now, but for the long term. If we are to continue on our journey towards being one of Europe's great small cities, we need to harness the economic potential of our city, our residents and our businesses. This draft city centre development and design framework builds on existing strategies and plans to set out how we might achieve this by investing in parts of the city centre where we believe there is opportunity, and capitalising on current investment such as Destiny Bridge to allow us to reimagine how streets and spaces are used. Clearly, this will require financial support from other public sector bodies and the private sector, as we are all well aware that the council's capital and revenue budgets are under extreme pressure. It's not going to be achieved quickly or easily. However, I believe we need to be bold and ambitious for our city and our region. The report being considered today is the basis for wider engagement over the coming months. It's a perspective for change that will be shaped through conversation, and I, for one, look forward to hearing the feedback and indeed other ideas. I'm happy to move this paper for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. Mr. Deputy Leader to second.
Thank you, Provost. These are, as has been said, ambitious draft ideas and concepts which we believe constitute the direction of travel for Perth City Centre in the years ahead. These are proposals which I am very happy to support. However, let's be in no doubt, these concepts are not currently funded. And when we all hear on the radio, watch on our TVs and read in our newspapers about the gigantic black hole in UK government's finances as set out by the Chancellor, and the very challenging outlook explained by the Scottish Finance Secretary yesterday, there is little prospect, to be honest, of meaningful government funding coming our way anytime soon to help us deliver these agreed projects. Private funding does, of course, remain an option to explore, and we shall. Nevertheless, it is absolutely essential that we do have an agreed framework in place so that we as a council can be ready to act quickly should opportunities arise down the line. That being so, it is vital that we have local communities, businesses and business leaders, focus groups, etc., supportive of where we want to go and in what order of priority, as has been said earlier. Therefore, this proposed consultation is of great importance, and I urge anyone and everyone with a stake in the future of Perth City Centre to grasp this opportunity and let us know what you think. And indeed, if there are other ideas, better ideas perhaps, out there, now is the time to share, and we will be happy to listen. Happy to second, Provost.
Thank you. Councillor Robertson with the first comment.
Thank you, Provost. I think this has been a very, very useful exercise. And although, as the proposer and seconder have said, there's no money available to carry out the ideas within this report, that doesn't mean it's not a very important document. And I think it's an exciting document. When I was reading it, it reminded me of a document that the old Perth Kinross District Council published in 1995 called the Kinross Strategy, which was a plan for the area of Kinross, and it identified derelict buildings, it identified industrial requirements, and identified loads of different leisure and social things that the town needed. Since 1985, the various councillors for that area have worked to try and deliver that strategy, and it's largely been completed. If you look at the Western Relief Road, which opened up the Kinross West Industrial Area, the Swansacre building, which was a derelict building in the middle of Kinross, is now made into affordable housing. If you look at the Round the Loch walkway and cycleway that was identified as needed, upgrade of Kirkgate Park and its surroundings, loads of things have been done on the basis of that strategy. So that's why this document for Perth is so important. And I think if we just keep it by us, and if as opportunities arise, and they will arise, to use that as a blueprint for moving forward. So I thought it was a great document, and I found it both exciting and positive. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Robertson. Deputy Provost.
Thank you very much, Forrest. Can I say that I hugely welcome this report and the intention to go out to consultation. I think it's vital that for the future we have an aspirational framework where the private sector can see investment opportunity and where we as a local authority would have the opportunity to quickly seize public funds if they became available against some of the objectives of the draft. With regard to the station quarter or arrondissement or whatever we want to call it, that it strikes me that the station site is the last late Victorian era remnant of the railway. Much of the rest has been improved, and I recognise the difficulties of integration of things on the site, but I hope that we can perhaps incrementally move forward in this area to improve the integration of our rail transport and our bus transport. And lastly, I can't let the mention of trams go without comment. It's not just buses I like, and I would recommend perhaps trams have had a bit of a bad press since the problems with phase 1 of the heavy tram system in Edinburgh, but I would recommend anyone who's interested in very light rapid transport to see what Warwick University are doing in tandem with Coventry City Council to establish a demonstrator line in Coventry for very light rapid transport. It's not beyond our future aspirations here, I don't believe. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. Councillor Peter Barrett.
Thank you, Provost. The development and design framework surely and clearly scotches any lazy newspaper narrative or myth of a lack of vision and ambition for our city centre within this chamber. What this report demonstrates is that the big strides and moves that have been achieved in our city centre have been driven by a council and members committed to a vision of improvement, backed by action in securing funding support from central government, both UK government and Scottish government, to realise that vision, not taking no for an answer at the first, second or even third hurdle, but by the Council's initiative and resolve and substantial commitment of our own resources to improve our city centre. The list of infrastructure, heritage and cultural investments to make Perth a better place to live in, work in and relax in lay the foundations of what is to come. A consistent and persistent journey with the direction of travel being set from seeking city status through to gaining that status and becoming one of Europe's best and greenest small cities. But there is a clear warning that we need to do more to make more noise about our offer. This document may not contain many surprises, but it isn't short on vision, and the whole prospectus clearly comes with a substantial price tag. But if I can understand the approach to the framework with its focus on 5 different quarters, demonstrating that the sum of the parts is greater than the sum of the whole, then so can Perth residents and communities. The approach to prioritising key large vacant city centre units and viewing them not just as passive empty units, but actually as active negative actors obstructing and hampering regeneration brings an urgency and focus to tackling the issue of those buildings. And I would like that we maintain a watching brief on the What Every Woman Wants building. Returning to the vision, I would like to see something bigger and bolder with regard to the harbour quarter. The extent of residential development is unclear. I think that there is an opportunity to create an innovative and hip quarter that is more appealing to young professionals with active travel links to the city centre. It's touched on with reference to Copenhagen, but now that the Council's application to close Perth Harbour has finally been submitted to Transport Scotland, I think we need to articulate and define a more ambitious vision for that quarter. And I think housing and alternative types of housing, such as houseboats, which are more affordable than would be better than a cultural or landmark building to better complement a mixed-use harbour quarter with housing and leisure alongside the container unit development of start-up and micro businesses. I appreciate that this is the start of the consultation, and I would be grateful if these comments can be considered further. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barrett. Councillor John Duff.
Thank you, Provost. I'd just like to start thanking David and his team and the team at the Urbanist for the report. It's very interesting and informative and sets out many varied and exciting concepts which will help us as a council to grow the economic prosperity of the city of Perth. I think we all recognise the challenges, especially the financial ones, which would need to be overcome to make progress. However, the proposals and ideas in the report are very welcome, and I would encourage all councillors, residents and businesses to engage with the consultation to help us to deliver on its principles. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. Bailey Hearn.
Thank you very much, Provost. As a City Centre councillor, I welcome the paper and the vision set out in it. The city does need a transformation as we see our towns and cities across the country changing in use. We need to move with these changes in modern lifestyle. Yes, there will be financial challenges, but there's an opportunity to be innovative in funding, such as using business investment. And as a final comment, I agree with the need to look at a light tram system. The Deputy Provost and I have had several discussions of this in the past, and I welcome his enthusiasm in that field. Thank you.
Thank you, Bailey Hearn. Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Provost. Thank you for the comprehensive report. It's aspirational, it's ambitious, and I hope to be able to witness it all falling into place over time. I asked specifically about the station quarter. Mr. Littlejohn answered with honesty that we are looking at 10 years plus. Well done to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. Councillor Colin Stewart.
Thank you, Provost. First of all, just thanks to the Deputy Provost for clarifying the correct terminology that'll sort out Bailey's problem of there being 5 quarters if we call them arrondissement. I just wanted to return to the issue that I asked a question about, which was about the consultation. I've seen various plans before from the City Development Board and the City Leadership Forum. I think this is an important opportunity for us to engage the public and specifically the wider business board. Well, sorry, to engage the wider business community, but specifically the public and not just the Perth City public in the development of this Perth City vision. I think it'll be important to incorporate all of that feedback. I think we as elected members, in particularly the near 75% of us that are from the rural areas, should be encouraging people from the outlying areas to say what they want to see in a future development of Perth City, and for that to be incorporated in the vision when it comes back to us in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bob Braun.
Thanks, Provost. I just really want to follow up on the Deputy Provost and Bailey Hearn's comments about trams. I know they've had some bad press. Could I suggest to Mr. Littlejohn, when they're looking into this, that they investigate the Croydon tram link, which was set up many years ago. It started life as merely a link between Croydon town centre and rural areas, but it's now stretched across the whole of South London, and actually links now into the Wimbledon station for the underground, which links you straight into London. It's a fine example of rapid transit and sustainable transport, and I thoroughly recommend that be looked at. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If there are no other comments, can we agree the report? Thank you very much. Members will take a short comfort break at this point and resume at 11:45. We could take our seats again, folks. Thank you, members. Members, item 6 is the Perth City Integrated Investment Proposal, Part 1. Before Stephen Crawford, the Strategic Lead for Property Services, introduces the report with a partial presentation, the Chief Executive, Thomas Glenn, would like to say a few words.
Thank you, Provost. Perhaps unusually, I'm disappointed to be introducing this paper to you this morning, because it's been 20 years overdue. The conversations, particularly about leisure facilities in Perth and Kinross, which are part of the considerations in this paper, have been conversations which I understand begun back in 2005. So as we approach the 20th anniversary of the beginnings of those conversations, I hope that this council takes the opportunity to progress decisions which previous councils have been unable to make. We have, as officers, brought you papers today which deals with Pool House and parking and with leisure facilities in the city. And in terms of the leisure facilities element, I won't make any comment just now, since that will be dealt with later on this afternoon. But at that point, I'll maybe get the opportunity to make some very brief additional comments. But it's important for us as officers to set out the context within which this report is being presented to you. And my thanks to Mr Littlejohn and his team for the previous report which Council has now approved to go forward with consultation. It was not a mistake, I think, on officers' part that that report came first and set out the important strategic context for the city. And that's a context where we, as officers, share this council's ambitions to deliver a vibrant, energetic city that meets the needs of the residents of both Perth, wider Perth and Kinross, and individuals who choose to visit Perth and Kinross. But there's a further context, and that's the financial context which we are currently facing as a council. We are facing a known £11 million cut over the next number of years in terms of this administration to services and potentially elements of your workforce. That's on the back of having already removed millions of pounds of costs and reductions in services over the lifetime of this administration. We know from recent announcements from UK and from Scottish Government, as recently as yesterday, that we are facing significant financial challenges as we move into the settlements that we expect over the coming years. And for those members who will be aware of updates to the IJB, we know that there is an £8 million in-year pressure in terms of health and social care. And the announcement yesterday by government highlighted a potential reduction of £116 million in funding for health and social care. Addressing those financial difficulties are the context within which we are operating as a council, alongside £5 million in cuts to children's social work and to education services which are currently in your approved budget, and a cut of £1.6 million in your leadership and management capacity on the back of already taken reductions in capacity inside your team. So that for me is the financial context within which you're being asked to make decisions on investment, both in Pool House, which offers a fantastic opportunity to place Perth City and Perth and Kinross Council at the heart of public sector reform in Scotland. Stephen and Kirsty and colleagues in the property team have worked tirelessly over the last year since council approved officers to provide an option for the retention of Pool House as a base, not just for this council, but for other public agencies. And reflecting Councillor Barrett's comments about not taking no for an answer, we have continued to badger, to cajole, and to invite our colleagues in other public agencies to join us in a vision for Perth, where public sector services are integrated and provide better joined up services to the people that we serve. The first elements of the proposal this morning, I believe, as Chief Executive, allow us to deliver that type of service for the people of Perth and Kinross Council. And I look forward to listening to debate by members and then offering some comment on the leisure paper later on today. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd now like to introduce Claire Mailer, Director of Strategy, People and Resources, and Stephen Crawford, Strategic Lead for Property Services, to introduce the report.
Thank you, Provost, and good morning, councillors. The decisions you make today will have a significant and lasting impact on our communities. Oh, could we get the slides up, please? On our communities and the people across Perth and Kinross who we are all here to serve. We are all aware of the strength of feeling about various aspects of these proposals. And so I want to just take the opportunity to set out the context in which these have been developed. I don't need to remind anyone in this chamber, as our Chief Executive just has, of the financial situation we are in. Officers are working exceptionally hard to deliver the significant budget savings, over 10 million agreed in February by Council. We are already seeing and feeling the negative impacts of these cuts on our communities. Decisions already approved, as our Chief Executive have said, will see 4 million of savings from our education service and hundreds of thousands taken from children's services. Our capital programme is under huge pressure, with significant core asset and infrastructure investment required to keep our roads, bridges, schools, play parks, leisure and depot estate functioning, safe and to a standard the public can expect and require. For example, due to the recent hyperinflation over the past few years, the cost of maintaining our road network to its current condition has risen from approximately 12 million per annum to 17 million per annum. And with only 10 million per annum in the current 6-year funded capital programme, over a 6-year period, we're at least 42 million short of the required funding to maintain a steady state for our roads. There are many other examples, but this is the reality and the very difficult choices that Council faces. At the same time, there are nearly 6,000 children living in poverty here in Perth and Kinross. We have increasing levels of homelessness, more adults needing complex care packages, a city centre in need of a boost, population growth, an increasing number of children with additional support needs. Next slide, please. So I do know that no one in the room underestimates the difficult balancing act that this difficult situation creates, but it is important that this isn't lost from sight in today's debate. I would draw your attention to paragraph 2.1 of the covering report and remind councillors again that all of the proposals brought to you today are based upon affordability and making decisions which deliver on the council's priorities, previously backed by you and supported by feedback from public consultation. Officers have worked hard to be creative within the financial limitations that we have, to make the best use of the buildings, the sites and the opportunities which are within your gift to decide. We've also presented these proposals and the wider options to elected members at our Strategic Investment Advisory Group and through fully elected member briefing sessions and individual group meetings, as well as providing copies of presentations, early sites of reports and answering many questions. We obviously also have officers on hand today to answer any additional questions that I'm sure you will have. When taken together, these proposals present an integrated plan for investment, which are in line with the instructions from Council in October, the agreement to explore a public sector hub at Puller House, in line with the Council's direction in January, the agreed base case for PH2O and more information on options for ICE, and in May, that housing is the priority for buildings and land which are no longer required. Next slide, please. We've just considered the proposals for consultation within the Perth City Development and Design Framework. That will help drive forward the vision of the Perth City Plan Agenda and Change to 2040. The proposals you are now considering are in line with this draft plan, as outlined in paragraph 6 of the covering report. These proposals offer immediate opportunities and tangible decisions to enable pace, progress and impact for our communities. These plans will be progressed by officers immediately and underpinned by our ongoing commitment to support and to engage with new and growing businesses. Next slide, please. So, rather than considering each of the decisions of Council in isolation, the future of PH2O, the future of Puller House and the future of Bell Sports Centre, we are bringing you a set of proposals which we think offer extra benefits for the City of Perth when implemented together. As with the cities and towns, as with other cities and towns, we need to give people new reasons to visit our city. With the growth of out-of-town retail and online shopping, even our dedicated independent retailers are not enough on their own to guarantee footfall. While our events are popular, they're not on every day of the week, so we cannot provide that regular footfall. Investment in the museum and the really positive feedback from neighbouring businesses show that we can bring in visitors to our city in a different way. The need to add a new offer to our city centre is something we consistently hear from residents, from businesses and from elected members, and it's why we think the potential boost to the city centre offered by this proposal is so important. So city centre footfall, a public sector hub at Puller House, helps bring more public services into one location, making the best use of our office accommodation and giving more reasons to come into the city centre for people going to appointments, getting advice, going to meetings, or simply staff attending the office. PH2O at Thimble Row will help to invigorate that end of the city, bringing people in for swimming, the gym, court facilities, and creating reasons for them to be in and visit the businesses around the old High Street and St Paul's Square. In terms of partnership, by bringing public partners together at Puller House, we're creating opportunities for collaboration and increasing the understanding and synergies which arise between different areas of work, similar to our successful hub model at Letham. Customers, one of the Council's commitments in the corporate plan was to be a visible and accessible presence for our customers. Retaining Puller House and ensuring people are able to access services in the city in a place close to established public transport networks is invaluable. Our residents will also be able to come in, receive vaccinations, housing, welfare rights, homelessness, employability, support, and a wide range of other services in an easy to access one-stop city centre hub. A new future for Bell Sports Centre also brings to life an iconic Perth City building which answers demand for all-weather training facilities to support individual clubs and teams. In terms of housing, we all know that the Scottish Government declared a national housing emergency earlier this year. Emergency homeless presentations are up by 6.5% in the current year. Almost a quarter of all applications for housing are asking for a tenancy in the city centre. And whilst there is land allocated for housing in our local development plan, this is generally not within our control, and only a portion will be affordable housing. Releasing the Perth Leisure Pool and Dures site once PH2 is complete will unlock a significant piece of land which is within the Council's gift to manage and make sure we're offering the type of housing which is most needed for our communities. In terms of energy, our current buildings, as we know, are ageing with increasing costs from both maintenance and energy, and you can see the high costs within the report. More energy efficient approaches are integral to all of the recommendations from officers, and the new PH2O will deliver a 70% reduction in energy consumption in a single facility. And finally, financial, and I have already said this, as had our Chief Executive, but it is worth repeating. These proposals are based on financial prudency. Whilst the PH2O proposal is significantly under the 90 million allocation, it does recognise that in the design stage, as costs become clearer, that buffer may be required, essential to ensure deliverability. The public sector hub model for Puller House will also exceed the 1.9 million savings target and realise significant savings within the wider public sector from co-location. These proposals before you today are funded, they are deliverable, they meet the asks of council and will offer our communities and our businesses a wide range of benefits and opportunities. I'm going to hand over to Stephen, who will cover the first two elements of the report.
Thank you. I'm not going to go into detail of what's in the report. It's all in front of you. We've covered it in member sessions, briefing sessions. But the first recommendation is to exercise their opportunity to purchase Pooler House and create a public sector hub. In October 2023, Council asked officers, tasked officers with either developing a public sector hub through the purchase of Pooler House and at the same time delivering a savings of £1.9 million or exiting Pooler House. This proposal delivers the saving and the hub compared to exiting and relocating to other premises in the city. It brings NHS and Scottish Government alongside the Council and other public sector colleagues in the city. Already the NHS vaccinations and child immunisation service is in situ in Pooler House with up to 200 vaccinations a day. This proposal will allow us to implement our corporate hybrid working policies and arrangements through investment in the buildings to make better use of less space and become more efficient. Going forward in the long term, all the other public sector bodies, organisations have agreed they will share the revenue costs of Pooler House going forward. So this is a cost sharing arrangement going forward of our property costs. Second slide, please. The second recommendation this morning is to exercise our right to purchase Canal Street multi-storey car park. Parking within a short distance of Thimble Row, and will offer the same customer offer in terms of pricing and organisation as other council car parks successfully do across Perth. In October 23, Council tasked ourselves with either developing the hub through the purchase of Pooler House or exiting Pooler House. This proposal absolutely supports the Pooler House public sector hub in the city centre and all of the city centre commercial activity through the purchase of the car park and delivery of the single biggest car park in Perth, 555 car parking spaces into our car parking portfolio. It will provide a consistent and high quality customer experience across Perth for parking, as our current parking services do, and the funding of the purchase will be solely borne by the car park trading account and supported by revenue from income from public and partners. A small number of the car parking spaces will be allocated to staff for operational purposes, as they currently are done. So that was where I was going to close the presentation, and back to the Provost.
Thank you very much. I will take questions on parts 1 and 2, which is Pooler House and Canal Street multi-storey. So I have first question from Councillor Cuthbert.
Thank you, Provost. And first of all, I want to thank Stephen and his team for all the work they put in. It's been a huge task, and Kirsty's been providing information to me. My question relates to parking, strangely, which is an issue that I have concerns about. I've got two questions that are sort of kind of linked together. The first question is, when was the last parking survey carried out? My understanding it was 2017. And the second question is, we have these partners moving into the building, and my understanding is, and I'm fully supportive of the idea of acquiring the car park, but we're going to allocate spaces to them. So do we have an indication of how many spaces will be allocated to the partners and PKC staff in that car park?
I will answer the first question, but yes, you're correct. The last comprehensive parking survey in Perth was in 2017 by Sistra.
Good morning. In regards to the partners, we estimate they'll need about 50 spaces within Pooler House. As Stephen had alluded to, PKC currently have 85 spaces in Canal Street car park. We will be seeking as part of this to review those and how many we do need, potentially reducing them to offset any concerns here.
Okay, thank you. Bailey.
Thank you, Provost. Regular readers of the local press will be well aware that the current operator of Canal Street multi-storey car park doesn't have a fantastic record in terms of customer service and how the whole charging system works. Can officers give us an assurance that if the council acquires that car park, you'll be run in the same, more equitable way, and the ticketing system would be reviewed in line with how the rest of our car parks work? Thank you.
Apologies. Yes, we've spoken with our colleagues in parking services. The intention would be to run Canal Street car park in the same barrier way that we run Canal Street car park.
Thank you. Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Provost. As we can see from the papers, the purchase of both Puller House and the Canal Street multi-storey car park are based on a sort of negotiation between the council and the landlords based on each other's valuations. I appreciate that for commercial reasons you maybe can't go into details exactly what these valuations are, but I wonder if you could give us some comfort around about our decision today that if we agree to go ahead with the purchase, how that negotiation and arbitration, if it comes to that, over the value is arrived at, and in the current market that we feel that is good value for money in terms of what the final price is likely to be. Thank you.
Yeah, Councillor Duff, I think that the important element to remember here is it's negotiated based on market value. So we have assessed market value. We have also had a second opinion on market value from the district valuer, which has come in very much in line with our own independent valuation of it. Clearly the landlord will do the same exercise, and if there is a huge disparity, we have then powers to go to arbitration. However, given that the district valuer is very much aligned with our own valuation, we are quite confident if we have to proceed down the route of arbitration, and I can provide assurance that the valuation that we have as a market value is very competitive indeed, given that office accommodation valuations are heavily depreciated, and we definitely concede that they were very much value for money.
Bailey McLaren.
Hey, thank you. Yeah, my question is also just around parking. Given that the current housing expansion in Perth and Kinross is mainly within my ward, Strathty, Bertha Park, Longford, Amman Valley, the current bus service provision is minimal. I think realistically we don't see that improving. Have we got within these thoughts of these papers the going forward needs thought through and considered in the proposals about parking?
If I can answer that. These proposals, one, as I said to Councillor Cuthbert, the last was a comprehensive survey in 2017. We undertook a survey over the last 2 weeks of what in response to members' questions over what the capacity of the current car parks was. Whilst that wasn't a fully comprehensive survey, it did identify that there was a significant available capacity both at the weekends and during the weeks. That actually supported the 2017 survey. Thimble Row Car Park had previously, on the basis of the 2017 survey, it would been agreed to redevelop that for housing without a car parking. With car parking allocation, but also the mobility strategy that was approved by council. The underlying core of the mobility strategy is about how do you encourage people away from cars in Perth, and how do you encourage people onto to bus transport and public transport and other routes. So to answer your question, there the available information and the anecdotal evidence suggests, determines that there is plenty of car parking capacity in Perth. What I don't have is that definitive report like we have in 2017.
Can I just come in and Councillor McLaren, I think, respond to the point in terms of bus travel. Councillors will be aware that, and Elaine Ritchie is sitting in the officers group there, we have committed to undertake a review of public transport. As you are aware, we're looking at how we can really encourage community models of transport across the piece, and we're also looking at park and rides. So we will bring more information back as that review develops. We've got a transformation and change update report coming to the next Finance and Resources Committee. We have got some elected member briefings planned, so we will certainly engage kind of more widely, obviously, with the public and do that kind of wider assessment. So please be assured in terms of the public sector bus offer that we are reviewing that as part of that review.
Thank you. Councillor Constewart.
Thanks. I actually had a separate question, but Bailey McLaren raises an interesting issue, so I'll follow up on that instead. The parking survey in 2017 would be before the Cross-Tay Link Road was fully committed. Part of the justification for the Cross-Tay Link Road was to open up land, I think 10,000 for 10,000 residential developments. The Cross-Tay Link Road was to alleviate traffic congestion in the city centre, but if you dug down deeply into the report on the Cross-Tay Link Road, actually what was going to happen was a displacement of traffic, so there would be less coming in from Scone, but we would expect more to be coming in from the Bertha Park, Perth West type area into the city centre. So have the parking projections matched? If the last survey was done in 2017, are the current parking projections matching with the projected increase in traffic coming into the city centre from the new developments out to the west of Perth?
I think we've got Mr. Littlejohn to answer that.
Could we ask, I think, Neil Moran online?
I mean, if Neil Moran's online, who's in my transport planning team, he's probably best placed to give that answer. If he's not, I can.
He is online.
He's there, so I'll let Neil speak.
Yes, morning, folks. Yeah, obviously the 2017 parking survey does predate some of the growth and changes that the member has highlighted. But one of the key actions that I'd probably highlight in the mobility strategy is the project to looking at a circulation plan for Perth, which will look at how we want the city centre to actually function post Cross-Tay, and that will consider the changes in the movements of traffic across the city, as well as accommodating any changes that come about through some of the development in the peripheral area. So these things will all be considered through the lens, if you like, of the mobility strategy.
Hold
on. Understand about the mobility strategy, but what I was talking about was the actual number of vehicles coming into, and applaud the efforts to increase or improve the circulation in the city centre. My question, though, was about the current parking projections and the increased number of vehicles that the Cross-Tay Link Road report predicted would be coming into the city centre. So it's really about the availability of parking rather than the circulation and the mobility strategy.
I think the situation, though, is that there is significant capacity within the city centre parking offer at the moment. Both the 2017 survey and the more recent work that supported this sort of indicate that, and we are looking to do a more comprehensive parking occupancy survey over the next couple of months. I think, though, crucially, it's about how we manage that parking resource. You know, we can't sort of let an unrestricted access, if you like, to the city centre. So it is really about managing that resource within the city. You know, using the resources that we have available.
Okay, Councillor Welch.
Thank you. And it's really just to understand a couple of things. The discussion we've had so far is talking about essentially an option to purchase parking. It's just my understanding of that, it allows us to have more control over parking, future parking policy, better utilisation of what is a very much underutilised resource because of the current private operators process. So it's really just clarification on that as to how it might fit with the wider sort of parking challenges, if there are any indeed that have been voiced here just now. And the second very brief question is, have we ever actually had any complaints from people who can't park, other than complaints about some of the other operators in Perth? That would be helpful. Thank you.
Okay, if I'll answer the first question. This, as I said in my presentation, this would fit into the portfolio of parking that we offer very successfully across Perth and Kinross in terms of, Perth, in terms of charging, in terms of information about parking, and charging regimes. One of this, by us owning this, allows us to control the parking narrative, the parking charging policies, versus competing, sometimes even with a race to the bottom with somebody else that was undercutting us. So very much by taking the opportunity to purchase this at a depressed market, in a depressed market for property, it absolutely aligns with, we're buying at, or potentially purchasing a 7,000 square metre building right beside it, with people coming in for vaccinations all the time. If people choose to park, that's would wish them not to travel by car, but if they do travel by car, they've got car parking right beside it, and that will all into that, and that will be charged at the market price. With regard to complaints about, or with regards to lack of capacity, I think Neil is Hunter on the call. Neil Moran or Hunter could answer the question whether we've actually run out of capacity of car parking at any time.
It was specifically to ask if we've had any complaints about from residents or visitors not being able to find a parking space.
If I could ask Hunter to answer that, please.
I can. Thanks for your question, Councillor. The answer is no. In all the time that I've been responsible for parking services within the council, I've never fielded a complaint from someone who has complained they've been unable to park anywhere in the footprint of the city centre. Sometimes it's hard to get for people to park exactly where they want to be, but although we're a bustling, thriving city, we're a little city, and it's normally possible for people to park close to where they have to be. We have quite comprehensive provision also of disabled parking across the footprint, and similarly I've had no complaints from disabled users that they've been unable to park as close as they need to where they have to go.
Thank you, that's encouraging to hear.
Thank you, Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you, Convener. I thought that was an interesting response. I'm not going to ask a question about car parking, although I think there will be yet more to come on that front. But in terms, I think I want to ask in particular with the purchase of Puller House, apart from public sector hub, apart from the economic benefits and cost benefits that arise, could I just ask, and I do have a connection obviously with Culture Perth and Kinross, could I ask Stephen or someone else, the very last of the items you set there, could you set out to us, what are the existing risks with the Culture Perth and Kinross collection and how much of the existing collection that Puller House can take? Thank you.
I take members back to 2016 when we proposed a collection store within the capital plan to bring that forward. Now, ultimately, that was to address some of the risks to the flooding risk within Perth. The Perth Museum and Art Gallery. Now that project, that project grew to a point where the council decided not to take that forward. So that risk still remains of some of the collection being inadequately stored within the Perth Museum and Art Gallery, and at flood risk. We've undertaken preliminary concepts of what artefacts could be stored within Puller House in space that we've not been able to let to third party. One, that we don't need to as offices, one that we don't need as corporate storage, and two, that we don't need ourselves. And we're currently going through an exercise where a proportion of the top floor would be used for that collection. We're doing we've structurally tested the building, so there's no problem with unloading it, and we're just checking at the moment the environmental conditions of that. But I think it is a significant. I anticipate a significant proportion of the at-risk collection we will be able to house in Puller House.
And just to ask, that would, going forward, probably obviate the need for a separate collection store, and that's another cost saving.
This is about making the best use of the existing property we've got and taking the opportunity of a large building 400, 500 yards along the road, rather than building something or renting something afresh.
Thank you. Councillor Duff.
Thanks, Provost. It's actually my second question. I'm happy to wait till others have had their first if you wish.
Okay. Councillor Allen.
Thanks, Provost. I've just stolen his question. I understand that if the market rate for the Canal Street car park is above what we expect it to be, we would still have this as an asset. Do you foresee that this is a saleable asset, or is it a complementary facility for PH2 on Puller House, and we won't consider selling it, especially if the finances are as dire as has been alluded to this morning? Thank you.
I think officers are looking for a bit of clarity around the question. Are you asking if we would consider selling Canal Street in the future to fund budget gaps? Is that your question? Okay, it's perhaps a question for Stephen or even Mr. Walker.
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, a councillor, we need a significant. We need at least 50% of the accommodation for our own office needs to bring to be in our core. Or obviously, part of the hybrid working policy is about the new arrangements are about making this building work a lot harder as an absolute priority, but moving services that are more directly related to the public, there's a big public interface into Puller House. Going forward, is this building a saleable asset? Absolutely, it's a saleable asset, but at the moment we're not anticipating selling that. Indeed, the partners are looking for quite long-term commitments in terms of leases and arrangements to ink themselves into the city centre of Perth. Quite the contrary.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Leader.
Thank you, Provost. As a city centre councillor and as convener of the Economy and Infrastructure Committee, as you would expect, I'm particularly interested in city centre footfall and its impact on retail and other businesses. With Puller House as a public sector hub, as is envisaged, and taking into account PKC's policy for staff attending the offices going forward, are you able to say or give a range of expected additional people working in the city centre and working at Puller House?
I'll speak on behalf of the partner organisations as additions, between the NHS, between the Scottish Government moving from Strathearn House, Broxton, NHS moving from some of their premises. I would anticipate at least 200 more staff on a daily basis will be working in Polar House than currently. And again, we will be condensing our operations in terms of now we'll be able to fully implement our guidelines of 2 days per week of staff working in premises, or and front facing and office, to create the heart of how we work in Perth and Kinross Council. But I think in terms of footfall for the city centre, I previously mentioned bringing vaccination services, and we've got footfall of 200 per day alone for the vaccination services. We've currently got partners such as Visit Scotland, Scottish Government. Whilst it's office services there. There are other front-facing functions that they want to do at a local level. So I think the bigger impact is actually the public sector footfall that this concept will drive, rather than just staff.
Can I just slightly add to that question information? Having recently visited Polar House with the vaccination centre in situ, the place was buzzing already, and that's in advance of any of the decisions today. In a recent discussion with Kirsty, in terms of our hybrid working model, we anticipate that once we get all of the partners into Polar House, we are going to have to do some adjustments to hybrid working and spread the times of the week that they're in Polar House over to ensure that we can actually accommodate everybody. So, fairly significant in terms of footfall into the city centre when Polar House is full, which we anticipate it will be.
Thank you. And if I may just make a follow-up comment, just to say thank you, Mr. Crawford. You anticipated my follow-up question.
Councillor Harvey.
Thanks, Provost. Unfortunately, Councillor Drysdale's just stolen my question too, so gave me one. Thanks.
Wonderful. Keeping business moving. Councillor Cuthbert.
It's my second question, so if you want to ask others.
It's okay, it's only you and Councillor Duff left for second questions.
Yeah, you want to carry on? Thank you, Provost. In terms of parking permits, my understanding is that there are 526 inner zone parking permits and 75 outer zone parking permits. Do you think there will be an increase because Puller's a better place to park, and therefore we're going to see more demand from residents? And presumably, if it's similar to the Canal Street multi-storey car park, residents within the inner zone can park in Canal Street, so will they be able to park in Polar House in the same way? So are we going to see increasing numbers of people who are residents trying to use that space?
I don't have a view of that, but I would maybe ask Hunter Hope if he's got a perspective on that question.
Mr. Hope, are you there?
I am. Thank you for your question. Residents tend to wish to park as close to their house as they can. So although there may be some demand for parking in Canal Street car park, it'll be managed probably by that desire. However, it's a good point, something we need to be alive to. And if we do perceive it as being a problem, then we can adjust our policy with regard to where people are allowed to park using their residence permit. At the moment, it's normally within a small distance from their house or in the nearest large public car park. But that's something we can look at as we move forward with the initiative.
Okay, Councillor Duff.
Beg your pardon, Provost. Thanks. I think my question has been partially answered in terms of the response that was given to Councillor Drysdale, but I just wondered if they could say a bit more about the public partners and what we're able to see as but the actual and potential partners that we may be able to get in Puller House, and how much of that available space has already been secured in relation to it. I see obviously that the purchase will provide potential revenue savings both for the council of just under £2 million, but also over £1 million of saving to the public partners that come in to operate alongside us. So if there's a bit more information that you could give us about potential partners and how much of the space has been for partners has been taken up. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. In terms of partners we already have in the building, the NHS have already joined us, and we also have Visit Scotland and Social Security Scotland as existing tenants in Puller House. The three of these take up 26% of the space that we would look to lease in terms of the projections. In terms of other partners, as you'll be aware from the paper, there's interest in principle from Scottish Government to move into the building. Their floor space will be quite significant. And in terms of other partners which are not in the paper because we don't have that approval in principle from them yet, we actually are predicting that we will have too many partners versus space.
Okay, thank you very much.
Chief Executive is going to add to that.
Thank you, Provost. Yeah, just to follow up from Kirsty's comments, clearly the discussions with Scottish Government have been ongoing for some time, and we now have that agreement in principle. But we haven't given up on the idea that colleagues in Police Scotland could join us there. And that's a conversation that's continuing with their estates team and with the recently appointed area commander who is supportive of that principle. But that does require them to consider other assets that are more of a priority in the short term, both in Tayside and across wider Scotland. But we still see the opportunity there to relocate some of their front-facing services, but another conversation about some of the response teams elsewhere in the city of Perth.
Thank you. Councillor Colin Stewart.
Thanks. I wanted to drill down a wee bit on the cost aspect of Route A. Purchase price and remodelling is £10 million. If I look at the difference between routes B1 and B2, it would suggest a cost of providing the collection store of £5 million of borrowing or capital investment would be needed. If I take 5 million off that 10 million purchase price and remodelling price for option A, that leaves 5 minus the purchase price of an amount. We're left with, I don't know, £1 million or £2 million for remodelling the building for all of the public service partners. Is £10 million a firm cap, or is £10 million an amount which could increase in time from provision of the collection store and remodelling for the public partners?
The £5 million for, correct me if I'm wrong here, if Kirsty, the £5 million for the collection store remodelling was offside, and that was not remodelling within Puller House. The £10 million is the £10 million budget we've got for purchase and remodelling Puller House and potential and some elements of 2 High Street was an assessment of a midpoint of what our purchase price could be plus remodelling costs.
Provost, could I ask if Mr. Crawford could move his microphone closer to him, because I'm having difficulty hearing. It may just be me. So.
Thank you. And I think it's also when people turn to look at papers and stuff that can move away from the microphone. Thank you. Yes, follow up.
So just to be clear, that £10 million capital cost is a cap associated with the Route A project for the purchase of Puller House.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Cuthbert.
Thank you, Provost. Yes, I'm intrigued by some of the answers we're hearing here, so I'm coming back on some of the points. I think somebody said there was going to be 200 PKC staff in the building. Someone else has said that there'll be too many staff for the space available. I mean, I'm a great fan of this cost sharing. But in terms of the parking demand, we said there would be 50 spaces allocated, but it sounds like we're not really sure. And as people come in, we could end up with 200 or 300 staff in the building plus, and they might all want to use the car park. Is that correct?
I think to answer the question, I said I anticipated there'd be 200 staff from partners within the building from Scottish Government, NHS, and a range of other public sector partners who, at the moment, are keen to move and consider moves, and but very much depending on whether we purchase the building or not. At the moment, we would like to have concrete discussions. So it's 200 now. All of those, what Kirsty said from the discussions with NHS, Scottish Government, and a number of partners. Correct me if I'm wrong, Kirsty. About 50 car parking spaces for corporate vehicles have been asked for, but not for necessarily for their own staff park. Yes, but they don't have allocated car parking spaces.
I might come back on that. Yeah. So basically, we're saying there's 50 allocated for the sort of corporate, the executives, if you like. But people working there may want to bring their own car, park next to the building, and use it. In terms of 200 staff, I think you said that was the partners would have 200 staff, but PKC will also have staff there. So roughly how many in total will they be, including the PKC staff?
So current averages in Pillar House are about 260 members of PKC staff. So if we add that to the 200 partner staff, we look at about 460. However, space planning, when it's complete, the numbers around Pillar House from PKC staff will obviously change.
Very briefly.
Just to say thank you for that. I think so. We're about 460 people, and it's fantastic. We're bringing them into the city centre. What I'm trying to do is model how many car spaces we're going to need, because it will come up later. So thank you for your help.
Okay, Bailey.
Thank you. It's good to hear and reassuring to hear that there are still discussions ongoing with Police Scotland. A couple of questions on that, just to dig in a little. I think everyone here would probably agree that their existing premises on Barrack Street are an eyesore, but there was considerable concern about the so-called temporary closure of the custody facility there. So the first part of my question is that if Police Scotland move into Puller House, does that seal the fate of the custody facility in Perth? The second question is a little bit delicate, and I hope people will understand I come from a position of care with this, but it's regarding whether the police will be seen as a good neighbour by all of the third sector organisations and the NHS who are working in Puller House. I worry that there might be some people, unfortunately in this day and age, who worry about going into a building to access certain services if they see also a police logo above the door. I hope you can understand I come at that from a position of care. Thank you.
Thank you. Thomas Clinton's going to take it.
If I could answer where we are with the discussion with police, we don't have any commitment in here from the police on the business case as presented. We are working, Thomas and I are working with the police to review their accommodation across Perth. So their accommodation was at no time was going to be solely accommodated within Puller House, and we are looking at other locations, locations in our portfolio in Perth that can accommodate some of their other needs.
Thank you.
And maybe just to pick up specifically on the custody suite question, that is a conversation that colleagues in Police Scotland are having in respect of the whole of Tayside and looking at the sites. But as Stephen alluded to, we wouldn't anticipate custody suites being part of the offer at Puller House.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Provost. I'm trying to understand this car parking because with Puller House, the car parking next to it, and I think I got quite confused with some of these questions that were coming out. But there's two elements to the car parking, as far as I understand. I'm just going to look for confirmation here that there will be some reserve spaces that will be reserved for operational purposes, but linking to the amount of people that are in Puller House, is really irrelevant to what the reserve spaces are. If people want to bring a bus or travel by train into their work at Puller House or active travel into it, then they're not going to need a car parking space, and they're certainly not a reserved car parking space. So the element with this is that there's two elements to this. And as a council, we want to encourage, and we do through cycle to work schemes and that, for people to use other forms of transport, and not everybody needs to bring a car in. And just to confirm that is actually the case, and we don't have to reserve spaces for every person that's potentially going to be working in Puller House. Thank you.
Just to answer that, you're correct. I mean, the reserves, we talked about 50 spaces with partners and potentially some reserve spaces. Those are those are for pool cars, and operational vehicles rather than private, car parking for myself to come in and park there, for instance.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any further questions, and therefore I'm going to invite Leader of the Council to move the report.
Thanks, Provost. I feel kind of redundant when we get to the car parking discussion, as I've used the bus every day for the last year and a half to come in from Spitalfield, and I have to say that the bus service to Stanley, where a lot of the housing get built, is fantastic. It's half hourly, and once we get the Bertha Park Link Road completed, people will be able, there'll be a better service for Bertha Park, which will all be at the good. And moving forward, we as a council can look to see if we want to fund a park and ride out at Bertha Park as well, which can take people from the use Destiny Bridge. So that's all I've got to say on parking. So I'd really like to thank officers here, Kirsty and Stephen and the whole team. I've been down and walked around Puller House just to see how it's coming on. It's fantastic to see the NHS staff in there. They said they've been moved around to 3 or 4 places, and that is their favourite place, and they don't want to move. I think if we make the move and don't purchase this, I wouldn't be going for a vaccination anytime soon at any centre where they are, because they really love it. And the work that Kirsty's done, which you've shown us around, is fantastic. Imagine being able to sell more space than we actually have and fill it. I'm sure she will do that. But officers, as Thomas said, and Councillor Barrett said earlier, this has come around with flipped, and I've changed because I didn't see a use for it. And officers have come up with this plan over the last 2 years, and cajoling, pressing Scottish Government, pressing other bodies to want to come on this journey with us because of financial pressures that we're all going. It shows how we've worked as a council, a local authority, and with officers and with government and other bodies. So I think we should all be proud of the part we've played to get to this point. So I'll read my prepared bit now. All of us in this chamber benefit from the experience and insight which officers share with us. And while we may not always come to the same conclusions, we do appreciate the work that they put into preparing reports and briefings that allow us to make decisions for the benefit of the people of Perth and Kinross. And I want to just thank them again for their hard work to create feasible and affordable options for us to debate and decide on. Having said that, I'm pleased to propose this motion with a small amendment which should be put up on the screen. It's just to formalise what Stephen Crawford said in his introduction, that the funding for the purchase of the Kinross Street car park will come from the car park trading account and not from our general fund. So I hope people can see the sense of funding it from that. So to purchase Puller House, the current office premises of Perth and Kinross Council, with a vision of transforming it into a public sector hub. This hub will not only house our council offices, but also include the NHS and other local government partners. We have already seen the success of this model with the vaccination centre moving in, demonstrating how well such a shared space can work. It will ensure this large city centre property is kept in use, retaining a visible and accessible presence for the public looking to the council for services. Working alongside other public sector partners will also create opportunities for more working together, whether that's seeing crossovers that will benefit the public, such as offering support and benefit entitlement targeted alongside visitors to vaccination clinics, or helping close the gaps between different organisations that will be working much closer together to ensure that everyone who needs support receives it. As I said, in addition, my motion is also to purchase the neighbouring Canole Street multi-storey car park. As I've said, this will be funded through the car park trading account, ensuring no additional financial burden on our general fund budget. And by buying the Canole Street multi-storey car park and bringing the operating arrangements into line with the other council-owned car parks, we will be providing a more reliable and user-friendly parking experience for residents and visitors alike. And I'm sure that this will increase greatly the usage of that car park. I'd like to move the paper. Thanks.
Sorry, Mr. Leader, just quickly before you leave the podium there, just to be clear for members, you're moving parts 1A through to 2B. You're not moving the entire paper at this point. You're just moving those parts. Yeah.
Yes, I am. And it's been explained why we're doing this, so we can get time critical documents on their way. Thanks.
Thank you. Just for the clarity there, Deputy Leader.
Thank you, thank you, Provost. I just want to echo what's already been said, and I think the contributions that we've heard this morning from the Chief Executive, from Claire Mailer, from Stephen Crawford, from Kirsty Fleming, from Hunter Hope and others online. I didn't take a note of all their names, but thank you to you all for your clear and confident submissions to Council. They are much appreciated. Provost, I'm pleased to second this motion with the Leader's minor amendment and as just outlined by yourself. This is crucial for the economic vitality of our city centre. If we were to withdraw from Pooler House without purchasing it, we would face significant challenges. The demand for office accommodation has changed, and it seems unlikely that such a large building would quickly find another tenant other than through the hard work that's been undertaken and described this morning. This could have led to a vacant, underutilised space right in the heart of our city, negatively impacting the local economy and city centre businesses. However, by bringing together public sector organisations within Pooler House, we have a unique opportunity to not only save money on the current rent, but also, as outlined, to increase footfall in the city centre. More people working and visiting the hub will directly benefit local businesses, creating a more vibrant and dynamic economic environment. Likewise, as a city centre councillor, I, and I'm sure most of the city ward members, regularly hear grumbles about the current Canole Street multi-storey car park and how it operates. The opportunity to bring that into council control will make it far more appealing and less confusing for visitors and residents alike when it operates in the same way as the majority of city centre car parks, which can only be of benefit to the city centre experience. Provost, as I say, I'm happy to second. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Leader. Councillor Peter Parrott with the first comment.
Thanks, Provost. I'm happy to go with the amendment that's been proposed. I think it's important that we keep our eye on the prize and the big picture here. Detail on parking is all very well, but I think we're selling ourselves short if we just focus on that aspect of it. We have the opportunity to deliver a national best practice exemplar of delivering on one public sector estate ambitions, which will be unrivaled in Scotland. This will be on a scale that isn't replicated anywhere else in Scotland, and I think it represents a huge amount of work on an extremely sensitive and complex set of negotiations, and our officers are to be commended for getting us to the stage where we can have local and Scottish government agencies and the public sector all working under one roof and delivering efficiencies and benefits through collaboration by doing so. I think the public sector hub has massive benefits for our city centre in terms of shortfall and potentially spend. It's got huge benefits for people accessing services in terms of convenience for both residents and visitors. I think the council ownership of Canole Street car park, as others have said during the question stage, and a change of the charging regime and the operating procedures and practices will bring underutilised parking facilities back into effective use and not have visitors and residents in our city leaving having felt being stung with a parking penalty notice and put off ever returning or using the facility ever again. It has, from the outset, been clear to me that the financial savings, the benefits of co-location of services and partners, and the synergies that will derive from the public sector hub make it incumbent upon this council to pursue and realise that goal. The proposals represent a prized opportunity whose time has come, and we need to see it. So I commend the motion and amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Tom McEwen.
Thank you, Provost. I'm probably going to say virtually what Peter has just said, or congratulating on how he said it. I probably use less words that Peter has used because I've not written them down and prepared them in advance. Yes. And because I've not written them down. But firstly, I need to congratulate the officers who have been involved in this. This is, as Peter said, this is a leading example of how the public sector can work together. People in this chamber know I also work for the NHS, and through my time as a convener and my time on COSLA committees, it's become very evident to me that our different organisations, when they work together, it's better for the public. We get more efficient services, we get better inter-agency working, and it's more effective for our people of Perth and Kinross. So this model going forward, I think, will be pushed to be copied around the country by others. And I think that what we're showing and showing the way, I think our criminal justice service already does this to an extent, working very closely. And I think some of the criminal justice services across Scotland would envy how our partners currently work together. And I think there's going to be an improvement going forward, which will benefit the people of Perth and Kinross. Thank you.
Thank you. Bailey McLaren.
Thank you, Provost. Thank you to everybody who's clearly put a great deal of time, effort, energy into bringing this paper and the negotiations that sit behind it. I would say, yet again, Perth and Kinross Council are leading by example, setting a really strong example, which has happened many times in our housing and other areas. It's visionary, it's innovative, and I'm sure many other local authorities in Scotland will have their eyes on us now. So again, you know, that is highly commendable. I notice the Scottish Government, you've mentioned them, so I look forward to the rural farming community coming into town. So thank you.
Thank you, Bailey McLaren. Councillor Cuthbert.
It's just more of the same, I'm afraid. Yeah, I think Stephen and his team have done an amazing job. I know that the Chief Executive's been involved in persuading people to come in. I think it's fantastic. It's really imaginative. I'm particularly delighted to see the Canole Street car park coming into the equation. Footfall for me is essential if you're going to see a thriving city centre. And I think the acquisition of that means we can actually make it a better place to park, and we're going to see more people using it. It'll draw more people in, because I think it's absolutely essential for things like the Perth Museum to work. We've got to have the parking. So well done to everybody involved.
Thank you. Councillor Reddick.
Thanks, Provost. Just a brief one. I'm not sure Councillor McEwen did use fewer words than Councillor Barrett actually in the end, but we'll skip past that one. And a much needed effort to take more exercise. I've been wandering through Thimble Road car park on a reasonably regular basis over the last few months, and I wander through it because by and large it's an empty space, frankly, and this can be quite early in the morning and sometimes regrettably quite late at night as well. My anecdotal experience of car parking in Perth, which was backed up by the briefing that we got, is that Scott Street car park can be pretty busy, Mill Street car park can be pretty busy, not many of the other car parks are. So, and I only speak personally here, but when we consider very important things this afternoon, car parking will not be at the forefront of my thoughts. I approve of this paper. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Provost. I too welcome the exceptional work undertaken by Mr Crawford and his team on the purchase of Puller House and the Kinross Street car park. I think this is a great move for Perth and Kinross Council, and will provide ongoing revenue savings both for us and for our partners in the combined region, somewhere in excess of £3 million per annum. Puller House is a key building in a strategic location, and the partnership with other public sector and government agencies via the public sector hub has been a goal long sought after by many local authorities. Indeed, I'm sure somewhere in the region of 25 years ago, when I was in the police, it was a subject of many discussions and meetings that I had in my job at the time. Hopefully, what we'll agree today will be an exemplar for other public sector teams to follow. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Liz Barrett.
Thank you, Provost. I warmly welcome this report and the proposals, and I'd like to add my thanks. And as Councillor McEwen said, congratulations to Stephen and Kirsty and all the other teams of council officers who've been involved in this. It is a really exciting opportunity for Perth and Kinross to lead in providing joined up services to our residents and working with other partners to reduce overall costs to the public purse across all areas, as highlighted by Councillor Duff. The increased city centre footfall will support our city centre businesses, our shops and restaurants, and the improvement and simplification of the parking service at Kinross Street will be very welcome to many. And this investment is expected not just to achieve, but to exceed our savings target. I'm glad to hear that everyone appears to be joining me in supporting the recommendations 1 and 2 as amended. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Welch.
Thank you, Provost. Too often you read about council officers, council not doing things for the people wrongly, in my view. And this is really just to sort of ensure that, you know, the press should pick up and social media should pick up, you know, some fantastic efforts led by Thomas Glenn, the Chief Executive, working closely with the Scottish Government and absolutely tremendously supported by Stephen and Kirsty to deliver what is a fantastic opportunity for Perth to bring both economic benefit, footfall to the city and really sort of transform this area sort of going forward with a building that will be filled and bustling. So it's really to commend those officers and the Chief Executive for a job that is on the way to being really well done. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Collins Stewart.
Thank you, Provost. Provost, you'll be aware that I have for a long time been sceptical about the need for us to continue using Puller House. And I think that in the past we have had cheaper and better options for consolidating the council's property estate in the city centre. However, I would like to, as the other members have, recognise the amount of work that's gone into this, and particularly the opportunity to bring other public sector agencies into the city centre, thus, as we've said, as has been alluded to, increasing footfall and potentially a number of people using local city centre businesses. One thing I am particularly pleased to see in Councillor Lang's motion is the option to buy the Canole Street car park out of the car park trading account rather than out of our capital budget or out of general reserves. I think that makes a huge amount of sense, and I'm glad that he's included that suggestion in the motion today. Lastly, I'm disappointed that Deputy Provost Parrott, Bailey Ahern and Councillor Braun haven't suggested a potential future use of Canole Street as a multi-storey tram park. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stewart. And on that visionary note, can I ask if everyone can agree the paper? Thank you. Okay, members, we're going to break for lunch at this point, and we will resume at 1 o'clock.